Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire. Hey everybody, it's Doug Edwards, Youth Worker on Fire. I have a repeat guest with me today. I got a text from Greg Larson a few days ago, and when I saw, and then he sent me his newsletter, his email to what is happening in his life. And Greg's had a lot of amazing things happen since he asked Jesus in his heart. And I think you were in high school. Is that right, Greg, when you asked Jesus in your heart?
I was in college.
You were in college. Okay. Before you went to Major League Baseball, what year was it? Your freshman year, junior year? When?
So it was during my sophomore, junior year of college. So that would have been 2010, 2011.
Yeah, going into that. Great baseball player. But I'm not gonna go into that because I want you to go back, listen to episode 40. Greg was right at the beginning of this podcast. And so he was with Fellowship of Christian Athletes at that time. He had gotten out of Major League Baseball. I believe you played for the Red Sox. Is that right?
Yeah, I played in their minor league organization for 2 years.
Yeah, for 2 years. There you go. And then God called you into student ministry through Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And that's why I've got Greg coming back here, because what he has got to say to us is so significant about what he and his wife and children, you know, when you have a family and you're starting and you're doing any ministry, your entire family's doing the ministry, whether they want to or not. The entire family is on board, and the pressures are there. So he and his family have got a new ministry coming up. But he was Fellowship of Christian Athletes when I met him the first time and interviewed him. I believe you went into missions for a while and then a church. But we're going to talk about SALT. SALT is where he is going next. I believe right now it's looking like Colorado. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So I'll kind of catch you up to speed. I think I can kind of estimate since we talked last. So I was on staff with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in Seminole County, where I grew up for about 6-7 years, from end of 2013 all the way up until 2019. Then I moved up to Louisville, Kentucky to finish my seminary degree on campus. Got married also in 2019 and graduated at the end of 2019. And then my wife and I, we both had a heart to do international missions. She was fluent in Spanish, and then I took 6 semesters of Spanish while I was in high school. So the Lord called us to go serve and to do church planting in Mexico for 3 years. And then in 2023, the Lord called us back to the States. And I've been serving as an associate pastor of children and families in Keystone Heights, Florida, which is about 45 minutes outside of Gainesville.
Which brings us to the point to where now you're getting ready to enter a ministry by the name of SALT. And it's significant to me because all of these church plants are going to be in university cities where there is a major university. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. The vision of SALT is to plant a church in every major university city throughout the U.S. And so as of now, there are 30 active church plants. And I think there are somewhere in the range of 8 to 12 that are currently in the works. And so the Lord is calling us to do a 2-year a residency to prepare for our time as a church planter. So as you know, there's a lot of planning that goes into planting a church. So during that time, I'm gonna be on staff as a church planting resident at a SALT church in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is about an hour away from Denver. Their ministry is to Colorado State University. And during that time, we will recruit a team from that church and prayerfully consider where the Lord wants us to plant. It'll most likely be in Colorado, but who knows, the Lord may have a different plan somewhere out west. And the Lord is leading us to go plant out west in the next few years.
And remember, we're about student ministry. We're about anyone that's working with adolescents, and adolescence goes all the way to the age of 25 for guys, 22 for girls. And so it definitely includes that college age group. To me, all of that significant, middle school, high school, college, and beyond, and to their mid-20s at least. And then ministry never ends, because we are always in need of growth, spiritual growth in those things. But because, Greg, you're doing this, tell us how people can get in touch with you, how they can give to you before we even go on and tell more about this ministry. How do we do that? Yeah,
so there is a little bit of financial support that we're trying to raise. We're right now 60% towards our goal. We're getting partial funding through the SALT network ministry. And then also the church and in the Fort Collins area is contributing some. But if the Lord is leading you to potentially consider supporting this ministry, you can get in touch with me in my email. It's glars21@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to send the newsletter I sent to Doug, just giving a little bit more detail about our ministry, what the Lord's calling us to, kind of the long-term vision. And then there's also links to the SALT network. You can look up the SALT network on Google. And then also a link to the church in Fort Collins that we will be serving with. So that's how you can get in touch with me. And those of you who know anything about raising funds, especially when you are not in an established church, it is very difficult. And for them to have that much money raised already is quite an accomplishment, which means people have followed them, not only this church who's wanting them there, but it's just not that easy to raise that money. And this last part, you may be being led by God through your spirit right now to make sure that you help make up the rest of that money. And if you can't give a lot, then give a little. Give whatever God's put on your heart. I do this because I know what it was to raise money, and I know what it was to starve for the first 3 years in a parachurch ministry, and how hard it was to raise money. And that once we established how people rallied around, but it was a hard road. Well, the great thing about Greg and his wife and family is that they do have people that have seen them accomplish and achieve. And that's one thing I know about him. He puts his heart into whatever God's leading him to do. So tell us a little more details about SALT and why it's significant. So one of the unique things about the SALT network is each church that is planted in these major university cities is equipped with a parachurch ministry, so a staff-trained parachurch ministry called the SALT Company. And that parachurch ministry acts as the outreach arm into the college and university campuses. So think of it, parachurch ministry, as you mentioned, Doug, like FCA or Athletes in Action or Crew. They are not necessarily directly attached to a local church or connected to a local church. But the vision of the SALT network is to have a parachurch ministry with a direct connection to a local church for a variety of reasons. We were attracted to that vision. We feel like in parachurch ministry, sometimes it's lost. They do a great job of reaching students, but as far as plugging them into a local church, sometimes that can be missed. And so we're very excited about the SALT network, and especially my background serving with Fellowship of Christian Athletes and parachurch ministry for 7 years. I have a heart and I understand the value of parachurch ministries. But after I was ending my seminary studies and entered into the mission field, and the Lord called us back here to the States, and have been serving in pastoral ministry for the past almost 2 years now. Just felt very clearly the leading from the Lord to continue serving in the context of a local church. And so that's one of the things that we're really excited. And another thing we're really excited about the SALT network is there's all these SALT network churches throughout the U.S. Like we said, the goal is to plant a SALT network church in every major university city throughout the U.S. And one of the things that the SALT network is very good at doing is mobilizing college students that have been going to a Salt Network church for 4 years. They're graduating at university of whatever, and then they want to go get connected with a church plant somewhere else throughout the country. They don't have established roots anywhere, and they'll pick up and they'll say, "Hey, I want to go join this church plant out in Colorado or out in Texas or California or whatever it may be." And so that's one of the things that really excited us about. We went to the Salt Network conference this past January, and there was a couple thousand college students there with a lot of energy to go out and to make disciples of all nations. And so we really like the vision of the Salt Network, and we're hoping and planning to use it for the Lord's glory.
Well, I'm going to guess that SALT also stands for a phrase or something like that. What does the SALT stand for?
So, it's just the Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount encouraging us to be salt and light.
I thought as much. I just didn't know if you had made an acronym out of it or something like that.
No, it was started, roughly about 20 to 30 years ago in Ames, Iowa, which is where Iowa State University is. And a gentleman there had the vision of reaching Iowa State University with the gospel through a parachurch ministry that he called the Salt Company. But he wanted it to be directly connected to a local church. And so the vision was kind of birthed out of that. And then over the past 10, 15 years, the SALT network started rolling out more churches. But his vision was just to connect salt and Jesus's calling to the disciples to be salt and light.
It's amazing that the simple things we're supposed to do seem to be the hardest things for us to do. And salt and light, though, is exactly what we're called to be. Tell me about this. Tell me about your wife, though. Tell us how you all met. Tell us a little bit about your love story. I think our love stories to our wives, especially in ministry, are very significant. And since we are also talking to a lot of ministry people as well as people who are not ministry people but have adolescents in their home or grandkids that are teenagers or college students. And I think that what we're talking about here is going to reach a lot of parents and grandparents because we're in fear a lot. I mean, it's tough when middle schoolers and high schoolers go through their adolescent phases and different things like that, but at least they're home. When many of them go away to the universities, to college, we have big fears about that. So that's why it's important. And so I want you also to tell us about your love story and kind of give them an idea of, what God does in someone's life who's committed themselves to Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to share that. So my wife's name is Amy, and we actually, we met online. And the Lord used that vehicle to bring us together. But when we met, she was studying biblical counseling at a seminary. And I was on staff with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in Orlando. And the Lord brought us together. We had several video calls before meeting in person. And one of the things that really stood out to me immediately was just her heart and her passion for the Lord. She did missions work in Honduras as a single woman, served at an orphanage there. And her parents have been serving on staff with Cru, parachurch ministry, for close to 45 years now at the University of New Hampshire. So she grew up around college ministry, and that's another reason why we're really excited about the SALT Network. She, just as well as I am, are very passionate about reaching that college age. But the Lord brought us together, so we got engaged in December of 2018, and we got married in July of 2019. And she's wonderful. She's great. We immediately started applying to do international missions a couple weeks after we got married, and served about almost a year to the date after we were married. We went to training and then moved to Mexico in September of 2020. So a little over a year after we got married. And yeah, she has a great heart for ministry. She's a wonderful woman. We have 2 young girls. Our youngest is a little over 17 months. And then our oldest, she was actually born in Mexico while we were on the mission field. She will be 4 this July.
Wow. That's amazing. and nothing like those ages. We have grandkids those ages, and remember our kids growing up, and just lovely time, great time. Well, listen, what else, Greg, do you need to let us know? Because I don't want to take all your time. I just, after I read that letter, said, listen, let's get together this week. Is there any significant things that have happened since we talked several years ago that, we know about the ministries and things like that, but, was there some great trip you and your wife have taken, or some amazing event, something that people just don't know about you and you wish they did?
That's a great question. A lot has happened over the past several years. I think my wife and I, our experience in Mexico was very unique. We were in the central part of Mexico in a state called Guanajuato. And we did, like I mentioned earlier, we were doing church planting there. And our first 3 years, basically, of our marriage were overseas in Mexico. And we just it's just a great time. I think it was very challenging in some ways, trying to meet people. What are you guys doing here? We're working with churches, and we're in an area that was about 4% evangelical. And so just figuring out ways to try to share the gospel. As you know, that the message of the gospel never changes, but we do have to think about how we package it and communicate it to people. And so doing it in a different language, in another language, and I had to learn how to preach and teach in Spanish, and all that took a lot of time. So as I look back on our time in Mexico, it was just a very, very, very unique time that, we talk about periodically, how much fun it was, and how great it was, and how gracious the Lord was, and helping us out, and providing for us. And like I said, our first daughter was born there, so she's a Mexican citizen. And overall, we had a great experience. And it was what the Lord used to really think. After being 3 years there, the Lord, after our term ended, the Lord brought us back here, and we weren't sure if pastoral ministry was the right route. But I other people had affirmed in me that the gift of teaching and preaching, and obviously had a lot of experience in evangelism through Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and just being out in the public school, high school, middle school setting, and also working with coaches. And so it's been the past almost 2 years now of serving as a pastor has been a very formative experience, not just for me, but my wife as well. She's full-time at home with the little ones. And we've been very grateful for our church family here at First Baptist Keystone Heights. And it's just been a great growing experience, walking together with people, doing life together. It was towards the end of last year where we started praying about, all right, Lord, if you're not calling us here long term, just show us where you want us to be. And one thing led to another, and we got connected with the SALT network, which I'd heard about for the last several years. And we actually got connected with the SALT network church here in Gainesville. They have one here at the University of Florida, and a friend of mine leads worship there. And so connected with them, and just felt like staying in Florida wasn't where the Lord was calling us to. And so that led us out to Colorado. And there's one church for every 32,000 people out there. And so it's a very different culture, very different climate than most places throughout the U.S. And so we definitely feel a burden to go to a place in the U.S. that relatively has very little churches. And so there's challenge in some ways, but there's a wide open door for people to hear the good news about Jesus.
Oh, absolutely. And number one, I love Colorado. I've spent a lot of time in Colorado over the years, took students out there for conferences, for ski trips and snowboard, and a great place to share the gospel with them and stretch their, especially since you're Florida sand kids, sand and water, and you take them to high altitude, and that plays a whole nother number on your body. And so it gives you real opportunities to share. So I'm very excited for you going there, because number one, the beauty is just beyond belief. But the what you said about one church, I think for 32,000, is that right?
Yeah, one church for every 32,000 people.
So the church that's doing this, though, in Fort Collins, Were they a part of the SALT network already, or they adopted the SALT network?
They became a part of the SALT network a couple of years ago. They're actually part of a smaller network. We're using a lot of networks here, but they're part of a smaller network called City Light. And City Light is a family of independent but interconnected churches that started in the Omaha, Nebraska area. They started a church planting movement throughout the Midwest. The two pastors at the City Light Church in Fort Collins will be joining, doing our church planting residency. They were sent out from that church in Omaha, and they were both worked or served in the parachurch ministry world for a few years with Cru, caught the vision for the local church and for church planting. And so they were sent out, I believe it was about 4 to 5 years ago, to plant the church in Fort Collins with a team. And so they joined the SALT network a couple years ago because their vision was to reach college students at the university, or Colorado State University there. So the church is located about a mile away from Colorado State. Colorado State, I believe, is the second largest university in Colorado, behind University of Colorado. So yeah, a lot of opportunity. They've really grown very rapidly. When we took a vision trip out there in February, and other than the weather, it got below zero while we were out there. We really enjoyed our time at the church there. I think they have about 250 people. A mixture of college students, but also their goal is to reach the entire city, entire community. So there was a mixture of older people and young families and college students and kids. So it's a very refreshing environment, and we're excited to go out there.
I mean, listen, you and Amy, to me, would be the dream team. She has Cru background, brought up her parents, been in there for 45 years. She's got stay ability. You tell us in episode 40 about your family and the incredible people they are. And you've been with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. You guys have been missionaries. You've been pastors. I mean, who would not want you? And so for God to send you out to that place, I think it's going to be just beyond amazing. Not easy. No ministry is easy. No church plant, no ministry plant is easy. But there are certain people that are just born and designed. Well, of course, God says that He's created good works for us to do through Christ Jesus. And that's what He's done with you guys. Any last words you want to say before we sign off here?
I just appreciate prayers and support. We couldn't do it without the support of people. And so we're grateful for this opportunity, and very humbled by those who have signed on to support us over the past few months. And we're just relying on the Lord to provide, and we're dependent upon Him, and just thankful for the opportunity to experience His grace every single day.
Well, Greg, I'm blessed to have you on here, and thank you so much for reaching out to me again. It's been a while since we've been able to talk or even communicate that much, and you're just always been an amazing person that I've known. I'm just excited for you and Amy and your kids. Your two girls being in the ministry that you're in. Whatever happens, God's got more and more for you. People are going to be blessed and changed because of your lives. And I mean, what an amazing thing for your girls to have mom and dad dedicated to ministry their entire life, grandparents that are dedicated to ministry for decades, the heritage, just spiritual heritage and a spiritual blessing there that's very few can say that they have. So let me pray for you right now. We're going to say goodbye at this time, but got to pray for Greg and Amy and the girls. And I pray that you would, through this podcast, this episode, bring a significant amount, a large amount of financial support and prayer support, and that there would be an awakening in Fort Collins and at the university there, because of Greg and Amy's commitment and willingness to go and be salt and light, just like you've told us to be. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.